We're having a talk with Lukas Zenk. I think in a minute, Lukas, I'd like to ask you to introduce yourself, but let's introduce myself first. My name is Michel Kloosterman. I'm a trainer of the Lego Serious Play method, and I'm also responsible of bringing out the LSP Magazine. Let me first ask you, Lukas, to introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure that you invited me for that. So thanks for having me. And I work at Danube University Krems in Austria, and I'm a professor for innovation and network research. And so I'm always interested how people collaborate with each other and how new ideas, creativity, or even innovation comes out of their minds and systems. And so I was interested in this method called Lego Serious Play. And I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago that there was one of the first certification workshop in Vienna. And there I met you, Michel.
We did.
And then we proceed in collaborating. So this is the next step of collaboration. So thanks for the invitation.
We're going to talk in the next minutes about flow and Lego Serious Play, and that is also because you're in the process of publishing an article on those two topics. I think I have it just in front of me, which says flow experience and creative output in Lego Serious Play. Maybe first question, kind of in general, Lukas, why Lego Serious Play?
So there are many creative or co-creative techniques out there. And I think they're of really importance now in our market or society, because I mean, the market is changing all the time, not only the last year because of the pandemic, but it's really an increasing change because of technology, because of globalization and so on. And here's the question: how can we, collaborate even better? How can we co-create something? How can we adapt to these changes? How can we create new strategies? How can we innovate better, and so on? Although these topics are of, I would say, utmost importance, we still have classical, traditional meetings in which people sit around the table and talk. And that is fine for some purposes. But if we think of, more co-creative or creative actions, I think we need to adapt that. And so I heard about Lego Serious Play, and I was interested or fascinated what you can do with that. So until now, I wrote 3 papers on that. One of them is already published, and 2 others are just, in the review process. And one of them you just mentioned.
Now you've chosen in this paper also the topic of flow. So a question there: how do, according to you, in general, relate flow and Lego Serious Play?
Now, the process was pretty interesting because when I did my research on the first paper, I was looking for Lego Serious Play papers, and I found one from Dirk Primus and Stefan Sonnenburg, who showed that the beginning of Lego Serious Play, the skills building, has an effect on flow. So I wrote them and said, oh, that's interesting. Perhaps we can do something together. And they wrote, I think 2 hours later, oh, that would be interesting. And so we started to dig deeper in that. Why? Well, flow is, in fact, Csikszentmihalyi, one of these researchers, say flow is the psychology of optimal experience, in which you peak on the highest performance. Now, this is a really interesting state for collaborating and to create something. And if I read different Lego Serious Play papers, most of them mention to some extent flow. So they say oh, flow, this is something that is of importance here. But we haven't found many papers that really empirically study flow and the outcome of flow. especially if you compare it with traditional meetings in which people just talk. So that's why we were interested in, like, that would be interesting to have like two groups of people. Like in the one group of people, they really use Lego Serious Play. And in the other group of people, they have exactly the same tasks and it's the same room and the same facilitators and so on, but they do not have this material and this process of Lego Serious Play. And to analyze that if there is a difference.
Important for you in your research topic?
So I wanted to really see, is there a difference regarding creativity? So if I have 20 people in one group with 3 teams and another 20 people in 3 teams here, is there really a difference if they use Lego Serious Play or not? So we said, like, we want to measure it like really in detail. How do they collaborate? What do they do? And in this paper, especially focus on flow, or some so-called components of flow. So we measured 5 times in a workshop their mood and their experience, and then compared it with the other teams, showing like, or asking us, is there a difference or not? Because from my personal understanding, and when I do facilitate Lego Serious Play workshops, I see and I experience differences. But this is just, my subjective feeling or point of view. But what if you really measure that? Is there a scientific evidence that there is difference or not?
Okay. You mentioned already creativity. Is there a relation? Yeah, there is a relationship, but how can you elaborate on that? On flow and creativity. I also could imagine, just an assumption from me, like the moment you enter that stage of flow, that it also a kind of narrows it down. You're kind of in a tunnel, and if you're in the tunnel, really in that metaphor, you can look aside, but you don't see anything, and creativity, in my assumption, needs a broad perspective. So,
well, in the beginning, Chicks and me, I asked the different persons how they, have this ability of create something really big, like Nobel Prize people or people from sports and so on. And he wanted to understand how can they, perform in this high level. And they always say like, and then I'm in a flow. And, when I'm doing that, I'm in a flow. So he said, oh, there's something like, let's call it the flow theory. And try understanding what that is. And what you say is like a tunnel. It's like you immerse into an activity. So your skills and the challenges you're facing really merges. You're completely in this activity by playing piano or going climbing or jogging or doing some kind of math tasks. And you just don't want to stop that because it's just on this high level. This tunnel or in this mountain, perhaps using this metaphor, you find things that you would not find elsewhere because you're just into that thing. So you can say like flow is this general state and this creative flow, or it might have an impact also on creativity. It can, in some context, boosts the creative output. So what is creativity or creative output? It's in fact to create something new that is also useful for others. I think this is the main principle ideas on that, and flow might have an impact on this creative. I think you're in a flow state. You're so much into this activity that you are not distracted so much. So a friend of mine, he's a professional pianist, and when he's playing his piano, like the really hard pieces, I once experienced that. I tapped him on the shoulder while he was playing. And he didn't recognize it. He was so much into his flow state, he didn't feel that. So I think this is also the idea of like, it's not the idea that you're always in the flow And for some components, it's not the best idea to just, put people into a flow experience, because then they're just in their sphere. But there's some phases or some periods in which it is helpful to go into this flow and then come back again to see all the others or see the environment outside of the tunnel as well.
A few minutes back, you mentioned that during your research, you focused on 5 topics. Now, maybe a challenging question for you. Can you recall those topics for us?
I'll try to. Now, the research on flow is extensive. There are many, many books and studies out there, but you can differentiate between individual flow and collaborative flow. So individual flow means, how do you as an individual experience flow? And it is based on Csikszentmihalyi. It's called components, that you say, like, these are essential components of this whole flow experience. And we said, like, okay, we do not want to test all of them, but for some we have a reason to test that. One is, and this is the hardest word, it's called autotalic behavior.
Okay.
Autotalic behavior. So telos in Greek means that there's a goal. And autotalic behavior means you're not just doing something for one external goal to get somewhere, but you do it like an automobile for itself. So you're doing that because you like it. You don't want to stop it. Okay. Autotalic behavior means it's one aspect of flow. You don't want to stop it. You're in this tunnel. You're feeling perhaps even good. You don't want to stop that. So the question that we asked for is, do you wish you had been doing something else? So it's a negative form of, you just don't want to stop what you're doing.
Okay. Can I just interrupt, because I had a thought, and because in workshops, and I think others also experience sometimes that the people are so busy or focused on their building, and when I or a facilitator says, okay, your 10 minutes are over now, and they kind of wake up like, really, 10 minutes? Is that what you mean?
Yes, this is one part. You don't have cognitive resources to think of time. So you're so much into that, you don't want to stop it. And guess what's the name for that is that you can use? It's playing. If you're playing, you want to do it further. You're just into this. Some people say, like, you're in the zone. You're playing. You're interacting with that. So what you described right now is exactly that. They don't want to stop. They're just, amazed by doing that. Okay. And this is one of the components. It's called the autotalic behavior. Okay. Another one is the mood. How do you feel by that? And it's called just happiness. So if you ask people, describe your current mood, is it rather happy or rather sad? So we asked them 5 times during the workshop, are you rather happy or rather sad? And this is another component. And the third one, I think, is the one that is well known and sometimes also included in Lego Series Play books. It's called balance. Okay. And balance means that your skills and the challenge you face are similar. So you need all your skills to face these challenges, and these challenges raises, and hopefully your skills also raises. This can be in a short time, but in Csikszentmihalyi thinks of rather like 10 years. So you challenge yourself, and then you have to build more skills, and then you challenge yourself and you go up, like in this, if you see the matrix that I just
yes.
You come towards more and more flow experience. If there's too much challenge and not enough skills, it's in anxiety, or if the experience of anxiety, or towards the burnouts. If there's not enough challenge but many skills, it's like the bore out. It's just boring, and So balancing these two things is also one aspect of or one component of flow that is also mentioned in Lego Serious Play. So these three components of this individual flow experiences, we thought like we would guess, or in scientific terms, we hypothesize that this should be an effect in Lego Serious Play more than in traditional meetings.
You said earlier there were 5.
Yes. So over the years or even decades, people thought like it's not only an individual approach, it's more a collaborative approach oftentimes as teams. So is there something like a group flow? And Keith Sawyer, one of the students of Csikszentmihalyi, studied that. He was also a jazz pianist and studied improvisational theater. And he tried to understand like, what are the components of group flow? And he came up with a lot of components here, and then even more. But 2 of them, we thought like these are of importance. One is participation. So the question is, did team members participate equally? So if you think of a jazz ensemble, they all participate equally, although they have different instruments, but playing piano or the guitar or whatever, but they're all participate equally. They're in the team. So this, he says, like is an essential component of group flow. And the other, he said, like, is continuous communication. So you're always checking out what the other is doing. You're in this real-time collaboration, you're improvising together, and if these and other components are high, then it might emerge something like a group flow in which the whole group, as you mentioned before, really is in the zone and co-creating and collaborating that. So we also use these 2 components.
Right. Well, I had the opportunity to read your article, and when the equal communication and continuous communication were mentioned, my first thought and feeling was like, okay, they're similar or they are related to each other. Why is it not the same? What's the difference between those 2 elements?
So first of all these components sometimes are it feels like they're similar, but they try to figure out some different factors. So you can imagine a team of 10 people, and 3 of them continuously communicate. So they communicate all the time, but all the other 7 are not included. So they do not participate as well.
Okay, yes.
So there could be from the outset a continuous communication, but not everyone is involved similarly. So the equal participation is like everyone is involved, and it's a continuous communication. So it's just another factor to look at. Right.
And could you say that in a setting of a Lego Serious Play workshop, everybody gets a voice and we listen to them, and then we ask questions, what we call into the model, so not to the person, but to the model. And then the next one has his or her turn. Is that also an example of continuous communication?
In a way, I think that would be for me more the participation. So everyone participate at the same time. They all have the model. They all can present the model. They all include the knowledge. So for me, that would be all the team members participate equally. And this is like a really clear structure that you do not have in normal meetings. So I think that's more at the participate level. And the continuous communication, we thought differently, because if you think like on Lego Serious Play teams and a team, they're just talking, we thought like, we think that if you look at this traditional meeting, there's more continuous communication. They never stop talking. Okay, so yes. One could say like, this is good for flow, but if you really think of a co-creative setting to create something new, we thought like, perhaps this is not the ideal phase. Like, so for jazz ensembles, that's good if, people are all the time, in the sphere. But in teams who create something, wouldn't it be good to have a break? Meaning alone time in which people can think and discover what they think, what their experience is. without just talking and listening. There are different creative techniques in which they show, for example, comparing brainstorming and brainwriting. So brainstorming means from Osborne in the 50s, saying like, now we have two teams again. The one team here, they have the classical brainstorming. So one person is, writing down all the ideas, and the other 4 or 5 people give some ideas.
Yes.
One setting. And the other setting is brainwriting, meaning that everyone just writes down ideas. And the question is like, who performs better? Who is more creative? Now, most people will say, well, that's a brainstorming technique because, this is what we learn.
Yeah.
But that's a myth. So all the studies show that the brainstorming teams have less ideas, less original ideas, and so on. And they say, oh, that's strange because it feels so good. But yes, it feels fun, and you hear to the others.
Yeah.
But the problem is you don't have cognitive resources to think on yourself. You always have to listen what they're saying. You're always referring to the others. There's only one person saying something, and all the others wait. Understanding that means that you have not just doing that, this or that, but to combine it somehow. Now in Lego Serious Play, we thought like there's a similar process. You do not have always continuous communication without a break. No. You also have this alone time in which you are with yourself, with a different material, discover your ideas, and then go back to the team. And I think to understand these two things, this is essential if you want to also understand co-creative techniques or LSP in particular.
We're getting close to finishing already, Lukas, but still 2 questions. We talked about, your research and the topics that you did your research on. Like anything, also in research, you hope for results. Well, we're not going to share every result. There's still a kind of a teaser for the ones who see this interview to read your article. But maybe, 1 or 2 are the things that are kind of surprised you.
In science, we don't have to tease. We were trying to, put up front the main results. And if you're interested, you can read more details. But what I found really interesting is that 2 components really stuck out, like this autotalic behavior, this feeling of you don't want to stop was much higher in Lego Serious Play compared to a traditional meeting. Mm-hmm. And this is what I also experience in workshops, in business or in universities. People are just, into that doing and creating. So this was really higher. And the happiness. People experienced higher happiness if they were in Lego Serious Play compared to traditional meetings. And if you experience it yourself and doing that, you see that people laugh and they smile. And we have other studies in which we also saw like they're just, it's a different mood. Now, and it's not just entertaining. It's not just, it's nice. But it's an effect. And this was interesting. The LSP teams in this study had a higher creative outputs than the others. Now, if you think of all these different factors and components, so on, I think there's some things that of interest. For example, if people, like what they're doing and don't want to stop, they feel positive, even happy, perhaps. They're building something together. Everyone can participate. Well, it seems to be logic that there's also an effect on the outcome, on perhaps it's creative outputs or innovation and so on. So I think that we could show that there is an effect using Lego Serious Play compared to traditional meetings. However, it's a very sensible process. You need to know how to raise the questions, how to use the materials and so on. Otherwise, it could be even, less outcome than expected.
All right. Okay. Well, your research, your insights, and the results. How can a facilitator gain from that?
So I think there are three main ideas. The first is, and it's clear, there's a different material. So that means you can provide a playful experience, but people get used to it. So that's why skills building is just so important. But it's also that people connect to each other. It's called a boundary object. So you have a connection between each other because of the objects, because of the model. So this is a helpful thing, the material. The second one is the process. It's a very clear process in Lego Serious Play. Now that's great because you can really structure your whole workshop accordingly, having the alone time and having the collaborative effort and have the equal participation and so on. But you have to really be trained to be aware of the process and to support people that's, to guide through the process. So that brings me to the last point that you asked for the facilitator. It's really not that easy, let's put it that way. So I did more than 10 years facilitation. I thought, like, Lego Serious Play, come on, I just used the method. But it took me a while, I think at least 10 workshops to better understand how to do that, because it's an unusual material. Managers come into the room and they see children's toys and say, like, really? What? Yep. So you have to give the permission to play. You have to translate them into this effect. So they have to, as we said in Flow, to immerse in this activity, although there's perhaps some skeptical perspectives on that. And when they are come into this flow and they love to be there, then you have to see when is the timing to get them out. And not only to get them out, but retranslate this experience in this different world into practice. Because metaphors are great to explore, but at the end of the day, you need tasks, you need the next steps, you need to-dos. So how can you help people to get into this world, but also help them to get out, to say, like, so what is the next step? What does it mean for strategy? What does it mean for product development, and so on? So as a facilitator, you have to deal with this different material, you have to deal with this different process, and you have to deal with a lot of emotions. So in the best case, they really feel good and happy and they create something. But sometimes the people also are frustrated because they cannot, build what they think. So they really need support on that. And we did one more study with managers, and we just changed the material. So one part, like 40 people, had moderation cards, so sticky notes, and the others just had Lego bricks. Now the effect was similar regarding the experience. So they felt like, more creative and inspired because of this great colorful bricks. But if we just measured the outcome, they perceived the outcome with moderation cards higher. And then we said, why is that the case?
Yeah.
Well, because there was no facilitator, no process guiding them through. So just changing the material, saying, like, okay, now we were creative, but now we use Lego bricks instead of moderation cards or flip charts, is definitely not enough. It can be even worse, because people say, like, oh, it's fun, it's nice, but what is the outcome? We wanted to create new strategies or innovation or products, and now I have, some buildings here. What does it mean? And so to me, it was like this clear understanding. You need facilitators who guide these people through the process, using the material, through these different alone and collaborative phases to really get out something of that. So the potential is here already with the material, but to realize that this is just another level. So we need people like you who train people, exactly to understand these little differences, this timing, when to intervene or not.
Lukas, thank you for the interview. Thank you for your time, your insights. From my point of view, I'm doing more facilitation and workshops and train. I know you do that as well. But on top of that, you do research. I ask you, keep doing research, so we can have a conversation on that. And it helps, I think, the community facilitators, but also in general business. Like use next to other methods, also these kinds of methods that help you to get closer to solutions. So thank you again for your time. And well, we definitely we will speak soon again.
Thank you very much.